Welcome back to the TelecomTV Summit on 5G Evolution and our live Q&A show. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content, and this is the second of 2 live Q&A shows today. Plus, we have a final live show for you tomorrow as well. So plenty of opportunity for you to quiz our panelists and our guests. Now, we've just seen the panel discussion that looked at telco strategies for supporting private 5G. And now we're going to expand on that and answer whatever questions you have. If you haven't yet sent in a question, then please do so now and use the Q&A form on the website. And joining me for this live Q&A show is, as always, Ray Maistre, Editorial Director here at TelecomTV. Now, Ray, it feels like telcos have so much riding on the success of private 5G networks, and more importantly, their role as the provider and operating partner. But as we've just seen, there are various different approaches they can take, and they really do need to choose wisely.
Yeah, absolutely, Guy. They do need to choose wisely. They need to partner wisely, and they need to be very honest with themselves about what exactly they are capable of delivering. It was very telling in the early days of private 5G 2.5 years ago that the telcos weren't particularly seen as the lead contractors for such private wireless deployments. Hopefully for the operators that has changed a bit. But as with all areas of 5G, there's still a lot to learn from all parties. And as Terje noted in the round table, there's still a lot of requirements to be shared from the enterprise community as well to inform everybody about the best approach to take.
Yes, thanks, Ray. Very good point. And I'm sure we'll pick up on this again during this live show. So let's now meet our guests who have returned to help answer all your questions. And joining us live on the programme today are Terje Jensen, SVP, Head of Global Network Architecture and Director of the 5G Readiness Strategic Programme at Telenor. Howard Wu, who is Global Head of Networks and General Manager for QCT USA. Sharad Sharma, Vice President, Head of Network and B2B Business for NTT Data UK and Ireland, and Timo Yokiaho, who is Chief Technologist, Telecom, Media and Entertainment EMEA at Red Hat. Hello everyone, welcome back. And Timo, it's good to have you with us on this live show. Very informative panel discussion earlier, so let's now take a look at what audience questions are coming in. Ray, have you got the first one for us?
Guy, yes, I do. Thanks very much. Now, this first question is about the role of the core in private 5G. And the question is, in private 5G networks, where will the 5G core be implemented? Will it be on the customer site? And what is the role of hyperscalers in this case? So a great question about the architecture supporting private 5G networks. Sharad, let's come to you first for a view on this.
Thank you very much, Guy. Excellent question. And a lot of companies are actually thinking about how to address this thing. So there are multiple options of deploying core here. So first of all, it depends on, the vendor, which vendor you're using, right? And if you're going purely private 5G or you are going in a hybrid 5G. So their first scenario, purely private 5G, you will deploy a core depending on the use case you're talking about, depending on the customer. Let's take an example of a port. Port could be a 200 square kilometer kind of a size of the area which you need to cover. So you might decide to go and deploy a core on the site itself rather than deploying in the cloud somewhere. While in the other scenario, if you are going with the let's say a public and a private cloud kind of using the public core for private deployment, you can deploy that core into the data center of an operator. So there will be different kind of scenarios and different kind of application that will drive which core where that will be deployed. So in terms of the hyperscalers, yes, they have the role. If you think about Microsoft or AWS, if they have to deploy core, ideally they would like to deploy it in their cloud, and which is totally acceptable if it is acceptable to the customer as well. In the ideal scenario, it will work because they have tested and it has been working for them for their different use cases that they have developed. Right? So it all depends on the customer, on the use case, on the applications that you're doing. But it can be sitting on the customer premises, or it can sit on the core network of an operator. So either of that. There is no ideal scenario, I would say.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Sharad, for those insights. Terje, what's your view on this? Is there a preferred option? I guess the topic of security might often crop up when it comes to how and where the core functionality might be deployed.
Yeah, no, I think just to elaborate a bit on what Sharad was saying. So we have customer cases, and it very much depends on the customer needs. So we have everything spanning from that the full core network and everything else, even the cloud platform from other applications needs to be on the customer premises. And typically then the customer requirements is that it needs to be fully autonomic. And I think we probably discussed some earlier today on a health and hospital case, for example, which has the requirement that everything needs to be on the hospital premises. And if something breaks down, so the hospital operations actually needs to stop, which is not acceptable at all. So that's kind of where they are coming from. Then exactly what Sharad is saying, everything then needs to be on the premises, including the cloud platform part. Then we have latency requirements, which, for example, means that could be the gateway could still be on the public network, but needs to be on a local or regional level to make sure that there is a short loop from the between the device and application, for example. And we also have like options where we have fully centralized mobile core. From an egoistic, I would say, mobile operator centralized, because it's a scale effect to have things centralized. So that's kind of the in ideal quotes setup on how we would like to do it, but it very much depends on the customer case, as Sharad was saying.
Okay, thank you, Terje. So unless we have any further comments from our panel on the core there, I think that we can move on to our next audience question. So over to you, Guy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ray. Apologies there, we had a few audio glitches coming from Terje's feed. Hopefully we'll get those sorted out very, very soon. Now, we've had a few questions about Spectrum, and here's one that we've selected as a representative question. The question is, are we seeing new Spectrum allocations to enterprises? Because there doesn't appear to be much movement here. There was a lot of promise of this a couple of years ago. Now, does this mean that telcos are still in a good position to offer private 5G? Is Spectrum the key to telcos' private 5G strategies? So, good question. So, Terje, I think we touched on this briefly in the panel earlier, but let me ask you first of all whether the fact that the telcos have licensed spectrum, often at huge cost to themselves, is this the key to their success in private 5G?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question, and of course I would be happy to say that the answer is yes, which I completely disagree with. And the reason is that for one, there are more and more countries see that they are allocating non-public licenses for 5G. So there are more and more countries actually allocating spectrum for enterprises. But what I'm actually coming from is that if we as an operator believe that spectrum is the resource we have, and everyone needs to come to us, we very soon end up or risk becoming a part of the problem. While an operator definitely would like to be part of the solution. So it's more like to be clear on the roles and what other things we can contribute with for serving the enterprises, and that of course be anything from planning a network, for example, could be on operating the network. You could help on integration, we could help on security, we could help on the analytics side and so forth. And it's much better to come with a proposal to the enterprises in that sense. And we also see that even though spectrum are allocated to enterprises directly, we see that the enterprises still come to the operators on the other kind of roles, the other kind of capabilities which is needed in order to optimize a private network. So I don't believe that spectrum, is the single, the role for the operators is rather the other way around. We need to be very, very strong on the other capabilities to balance this and offer that to the enterprises, and they would like to recognize the value from what we can contribute in all the other components.
Oh, good answer, Terje. Thanks very much for that. Yes, it gets you thinking, doesn't it? Sharad, would you like to come in and offer some comments on this question?
No, of course. I totally agree with Terje on this one. First of all, it is not the only thing, and operators need to go up on the value chain. But it also depends on how much spectrum is actually being allocated for that for the enterprises, and what kind of devices will be there to support that spectrum as well is something very important, and how these enterprises can utilize the capabilities like slicing and what kind of application they can run. So do they have that capability? If the operators can learn to leverage the ecosystem, the capabilities of the 5G network, with the SA code coming in picture and slicing capability and application on the slice, and they can start selling it. I think they can still differentiate quite well and still make a mark in the market with this spectrum. But of course, they need to work with the ecosystem, and they need to actually leverage the ecosystem with the multiple use cases that they can build together.
Great, Sharad. Thank you very much for that. And if any of our viewers didn't see it earlier, we had a great discussion about standalone 5G core and a live show about 5G SA core. So watch that if you can on demand tomorrow. Ray, let's head across to you for our next audience question, shall we?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Guy. And here's the next question, and it is that the panel didn't appear to agree on the best operator strategy for selling and deploying private 5G. Does this mean we are too early and that we can't realistically expect significant private 5G business until the second half of the decade? So, I mean, that's quite a few years off, it seems, but is this a little bit too pessimistic, or is this a bit of a reality check in this question? Howard, maybe we can start with you here. Are you a bit more optimistic than our questioner?
I think, first of all, it goes to show the diversity of the panel, right? So that we all bring our own perspectives into this rollout. And then second of all, I think it also speaks to the diversity in the ecosystem, because we're all facing different customers and different partners in their private 5G rollout plan. And I think this is a very similar, conversation to every generation of technology. Should we adopt buying computers in our company now, or are we too early? Should we adopt to email? Should we adopt to internet? Should we adopt to e-commerce? I think we've had many of those type of conversations the last 4 or 5 decades about when's the right timing to adopt a new technology to run our businesses. And I think private 5G is no different. I think, as the other panelists have stated earlier, what is the role of the operator in this? Is it on the band side? Is it on the service side? But I would say, we're actually seeing, from a QCT standpoint, we're actually seeing a lot of customers doing global rollouts. We're seeing customers in Asia, in Europe, and in North America all come to us with different requirements and different needs, as well as market demand. And it has to be, the technology itself is not a one-size-fits-all. It has to be incorporated into how does it help my business.
Okay, so interesting that in the actual question, the second half of the question says, can we not realistically expect significant private 5G businesses until the second half of the decade? I guess it depends on which perspective you're looking at there, because there is, as you mentioned, a lot of activity in the market already. So there's already business being generated. There are private 5G networks up and running, and we're hearing about more and more of them as each quarter goes on. Terje, let's come to you. Do you think that that there is a significant amount of private 5G activity and revenues for the different parties involved already?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of talk about private 5G. I think I'm just in one of the conferences today, and almost every session there was a reference to private 5G. But when you look at the customers and the contracts to be signed, we actually have quite a few contracts also in Telenor on private 5G. Or I would say probably private network, where 5G may or may not be part of it. And I think that's important to remember, that it doesn't have to be 5G. We can also just as well start with 4G, and quite a lot of the private networks are actually having 4G and 5G. So it's good to remember that, I think. Then, of course, we can argue about the word significant. We have indicated some ambitions on within Telenor, and I think if you take the revenue increase in the terms of 15, 20, 25% in the next five years, I think I would still refer to it as significant when it comes to some of the business areas. So it has to start it. So and I think it's high enough to be to address it, and we are addressing it from Telenor, and also we see that many other operators are addressing this as a growth opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great point. The word significant is really, how long is a piece of string, of course. And I guess, if you just look at the market, it might, people like myself might be tempted to say, well, maybe the best opportunity for business in the early days of private 5G might be with the systems integrators. So Shara, do you want to come in here and provide a comment on that? Is this where the early business is happening, engagement with the SIs?
I think the most important bit here is the digital maturity of your customer as well. So the biggest gap we see in the market, particularly with the CSPs, is they are used to selling the SIM cards. The sales teams there are used to selling SIM cards. They are not used to selling digital transformation. So if you think about the 5G infrastructure on its own and having a conversation with the customer for 5G infrastructure selling, that doesn't make sense. It has to be a digital transformation conversation. So that digital transformation conversation all depends on the digital maturity of the customer. So picking up the right customer for this, for selling the private 5G enabled digital transformation is a key. There are customers in the industry who are keen, so they are at a different stage of their maturity. So there are customers who know quite a lot about what 5G can do, what a better latency, better connectivity can do for them. But there are customers who just hear about 5G and they want to talk to you about 5G, and you feel that there's no traction. So the traction is there, but depends on the customer. The customer's digital maturity, and SIs are in the right space, I would say, to engage with those customers, because they have the diverse capability in different industries, verticals. They have been selling that transformation where connectivity has been a part of that digital transformation, small part sometimes as well.
Okay, yes. Lots of different stages for lots of different companies, absolutely. And Terje, you wanted to come back in there with a few more comments.
Yeah, no, I think you brought in the question about system integrators, and definitely we are also collaborating with system integrators, and in some of our operations we also have internally a system integrator, and of course that is the capability we are offering into a lot of the enterprises. I think it's important to remember, I think Howard mentioned that related to earlier, that the customer needs are very diverse. So I think it's a bit of part of the problem, and probably part of the question as well, that it's not a simple answer on how to do private 5G or private networks. because the customer needs are so different. So in some cases we have requests, that we are just replacing Wi-Fi with 5G. So it's purely a connectivity part of it. It's not really a system integrator task of it. So that's, of course, it's fairly simple, straightforward to do. In other cases, it's exactly what Sharad was referring to. It's a major transformation and digitalization of the enterprises. And then, of course, it's the main task is probably on transforming the processes and the way of work. And then, of course, we have a role to play. Could have a role to play there as well. But that's another, the focus for the enterprise is on something else, and we are part of the solution in order to make that transformation happening. So we are facing with all these kind of variations, and that's probably, again, sorry, I'm just repeating myself. It's probably a part of the challenge on that. It's not one way to do a mobile private network. It's various ways, different ways, depending on what the customer needs and also how the customer need to recognize the value. And that's back to the maturity. I think it was Sharad was saying that the customer needs to, and enterprises need to recognize the value of a private network. And that probably takes a bit of time to see how they can also leverage on that kind of connectivity in their other processes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's fair to say that the enterprises are looking at each other as well to share insights. And certainly the large enterprises that I've spoken to who have deployed private 5G networks, they all say the same thing, which is only once they've deployed and started using it do they find out just how useful it is in ways they hadn't actually realized or built into their ROI cases to start with. So a lot of learning, even for those that have already bitten the bullet and made an investment. So yeah, still a lot of intelligence to be shared about the capabilities and the best things to get out of these networks. Okay, thanks everybody for those comments. I think, Guy, I'll hand over to you for the next part of the program.
Yep, thank you, Ray. Well, it's time now, I think, to check in on our audience poll. I know you've all been diligently filling this out, but we have an audience poll for our 5G Evolution Summit, and we have one question, 7 answer options, and you can pick whichever ones you feel are the most relevant. And the question we've been asking this week is, which technologies and capabilities are most needed for optimized 5G systems? And you can see the real-time votes right here on this graphic. And obviously, no, they don't add up to 100% because you can vote for multiple choices. Well, it's changed a little bit in the hour since we had our first look at this. Still a lot of interest in reduced power consumption and emissions. Cloud-native architectures, though. Ooh, that's very interesting. But poor old metaverse is still propping up the list of options. Now, if you have yet to vote, then please do so, because we keep saying this, the more votes the better. I'm going to keep the polls open until the end of the summit, so you've got until the end of tomorrow. Okay, back to our Q&A then, because we have another, about 15 minutes or so of the program remaining, so there's still plenty of time for more questions. But first, over to you, Ray.
Yeah, thanks, Guy. But just coming back to the poll there, looking at those results, what's interesting is that even from the previous live Q&A program we had, which was only an hour ago, it's the energy efficiency had the most votes earlier on, but that is now switched, and cloud native has now received the most votes. And we were actually talking about that a little bit earlier. Timo, I imagine that you're quite pleased to see cloud native getting the most votes out of any of those options there. Is that a surprise to you? Do you think that that's how it should be? Should everybody be voting for cloud native as the most important aspect of an optimized 5G network?
I'm really happy to talk about that, obviously, being in this cloud business. But first of all, the results of the poll, it's not surprising. Energy efficiency is, of course, highly, highly important and deeply discussed in the industry right now. But again, few topics or points on the cloud nativeness. First of all, I'm really happy that 3GPP initially, when they did the 5G spec, they already called out cloud nativeness, containerized network functions and microservices and all these things, which was a great thing. And now industry is really picking up on the cloud nativeness, which will be or already is a big factor when building 5G networks, all the way to Open RAN. Now, cloud nativeness is not going to, of course, solve everything at once, but it's a great tool for many to solve many challenges or ease many challenges, like scalability of the network functions, specifically on the control plane side of 5G network. Control plane network elements are fantastic and beautiful targets of becoming cloud native network functions. Of course, the network function vendors have to do that, like what they did many years ago when moving from physical functions to virtual functions. Now the same needs to happen towards the cloud nativeness on 5G network. So again, control plane functions are really, really good candidates or targets for cloud nativeness. Some other use on user plane, we still can and will apply as an industry a lot of cloud technology, as I call it, to all of the network functions, all the way to radio edge. And there might be some things we cannot really utilize, or some network functions we cannot really utilize fully cloud native design, but for most parts that's going to happen. And maybe the final point on cloud nativeness is that with cloud native network functions and applications, we can achieve the similar availability numbers and availability characteristics and features as we have been used to have in telco networks. It's going to be done in different way because we have a horizontal architectures and the applications are built in different ways, running on a container cloud platform and all these things. But we will easily, maybe not easily, but we will achieve all the goodies of the old carrier greatness, but in a different way.
Well, clearly there's plenty of support for cloud native being one of the most important attributes to optimize 5G, and we're seeing that swing towards the voting there, literally as these programs have been going out. Howard, you wanted to come in there as well and talk about an aspect of these poll results as well.
Yes, absolutely. Let's give this another try. So I think looking at the poll, I think for me at least, both cloud native and energy consumption in a way talks about the same issues, right? We started the cloud journey many, many years ago because of lower server efficiency. And when we wanted to get those efficiency up, and by putting virtual machines inside, that enabled us to get more workload on top of a server that's always on. And then later from a VM into a container, which is just getting more efficient in terms of how we move and carry our application workload. So I definitely feel, in terms of the telecom network, we're still on that journey in terms of cloud native architecture. So that's number one. The number two is power. Of course, power I think is on top of every operator's mind right now. With, in Europe, there's a war, Asia, there's tension. US, we have high inflation. So I think everybody's addressing those type of OpEx issues with the energy issues we have today. And then I think the third one was Open RAN architecture. And that's really comes down to a CapEx question, right? How do we architect the network? So it's super interesting to me if one should take a look at, sort of the top three on top of everybody's minds. It really addresses, both how do we move application workload, CapEx issues, OpEx issues. So it's all very practical, and it's, at least for me, it's no surprise. Those are what people are thinking about.
Okay, yeah, very practical and very here and now, as was discussed in our earlier live Q&A show, and the metaverse, supporting metaverse and extended reality capabilities has got the least amount of votes, and it was suggested earlier that's maybe because that's still a bit too far in the future. Terje, any sort of shocks or surprises in the poll results for you so far?
Not really, but maybe I can offer to complement on what Timo was saying, also Howard was saying, because in my mind, these two, for example, on the cloud native and the energy, actually addresses two different aspects of the question in a way. So if I would like to answer this from engineering network planner point of view, I would definitely put it on the cloud native, and I have this rare feeling of agreeing with everything what Timo was saying, which the ones knowing me and Timo actually probably a bit surprised. But I would offer that on top of the technical part of cloud native is also the way of work, which is going to be very, very important. So it needs to be much more open and collaborative way of work in order to really optimize 5G. Then we're talking about standalone and the capabilities there, and the opportunity to integrate different microservices from various sources. So that's a part of the full-blown 5G, what we see. Where we actually are just in the beginning on the standalone part of it, and see what kind of capabilities actually can come out of this, and what kind of services we then can offer. Then to come with the last part of it is the consequence and the kind of the environment expectations from us is definitely on climate and energy part of it. So that's of course where we have to contribute, where 5G also can play a role to further contribute on the energy efficiency and reduce the impact on the climate. So that's a different perspective as I see it. So it's kind of two different perspectives of the question. The first one is probably on the more internal kind of thing, and how we can get the most out of 5G as an industry. And the second one is how can we utilize 5G and the impact on the society.
Okay, interesting perspective there, Terje. Thanks very much. Sharad, will come to you next, and Timo, we could see that you wanted to come in there and respond as well, but we'll come to Sharad first.
So I just want to comment on the third thing, which I've noticed that Open RAN has been seen as one of the components as well. So I just want to highlight that Open RAN is not a dependency on deploying any of these private 5G, and it's not something that is needed now. And you can achieve everything on virtual RANs as well. And the Open RAN is one of the areas, probably the people who are looking at Open RAN as one of the technologies for private 5G are seeing it a less power efficient, energy efficient solution as well. That's why they're thinking that could be something that we need to focus on it now. So saying that, we can still use the existing OEM solutions, which are very much power efficient, energy efficient, and we can still deploy that. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to say, that Open RAN is not a dependency. You can still go on and still have the good power energy efficiency. Yes, always whatever you deploy, whenever you deploy, you always look at the OpEx saving, make your equipments better and better as we go forward.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Sharad. And Timo, we'll just come back to you for the final comment on this.
Yeah, so you can see how well Terje and myself work together, because he always reminds me of some topics. So he talked about the ways of working, which is absolutely correct. But on top of that, I need to come back to technology just a little bit, which is automation. And once you have a consistent environment in all of the places, and you have cloud nativeness as much as you can, then automation and basing your network on kind of GitOps principles with the workflows and automating from that makes the whole thing way more easier to keep up and running and automate things and make it just work.
Yeah, absolutely. And in our Cloud Native Summit as such a big area of conversation. So absolutely critically important. Okay, well, fantastic insights there. And although there wasn't a response to an actual audience question. This is, of course, a response to what the audience are voting. So it really is, feedback from our panelists today on what the audience is thinking in terms of our poll results. So thanks so much for all those comments. Guy, have we got time in the program for one more audience question?
Yes, thanks, Ray. I think we just about do. We've got about 5 minutes of the show left. So let's squeeze in this question we've got. The question is, isn't private 5G just selling more of the same? There's too much focus on mobile broadband and small cells and connectivity replacing Wi-Fi. It's not very innovative. What can we do to make private 5G more innovative and therefore help operators in their private 5G strategies? So there's a question. Someone thinking that it's just more connectivity at this moment in time, and we need to go further. So any thoughts from our panelists about how we can encourage that innovation? Terje, I thought you might want to jump in. We'll come to you first, and looks like Sharad will come to you second.
Yeah, I'm happy to start on this. I'm quite sure that the others will complement on the quite a few other aspects as well. So in most of the customer cases where we are working on private networks, it's not only connectivity. There are a lot of applications. There are a lot of security, a lot of analytics which goes into this, as well as of course operations and so forth. So we typically start with sitting down with a customer and then have a dialogue around, okay, so what is the first problem, or what is the first need you would like to solve? And that could span from everything. So you don't spend time walking around and looking for things, but you actually have that in a database. So it's already recorded by a robot, for example. So I just look into the database and go directly to find it there. We also have customer requests like we need to document that the container is not damaged when it's leaving our harbor, or the other way around. If it's damaged when it's leaving the harbor, it was already damaged when it arrived at the harbor, so it's someone else who needs to pay the insurance, for example, or integrate with the insurance, for example. So those are the kind of where we are starting on the customer needs, and that means in order to solve this, it's not only connectivity. Of course, connectivity needs to be there, but it needs to contain, high definition cameras. It could need to include a number of sensors for recording various aspects of both the audio part of it as well as temperature and so forth. It's a lot of applications and analytics. For example, video analytics goes into this to recognize objects and so forth. So there's a lot of components which goes into the case. So I think we are about to, or we are probably already moving beyond connectivity in that sense, and that's what we also recognize in the different customer cases, what they're asking for actually.
Great. Thanks, Terje, for that. Good advice for other operators there. Talk to your customer and see what else you can offer them, because we've got a big toolkit that we can dive into. Sharad, let's come to you for some thoughts on this. Is private 5G at this moment just about connectivity, or are operators actually, upselling and being more creative?
So first of all, I would say connectivity is not dead, right? So you can still be innovative on the connectivity side of things, along with some interesting application that Terje also talked about. So think about a new development that is upcoming, where multi-story flats, and it has a salon, it has a shop there, multiple retail stores there within that locality, and then there's a maintenance company working there. So you start thinking about the slicing. I'm taking you to the next element of that. So you start selling slice as a service for connectivity, and then start selling applications for different retail shops, different maintenance companies that can work on the slices, the dedicated connectivity slice. And you can actually make a big business out of this private 5G deployment within that complex residential complex, and provide the services. So similarly, you highlight, I think Howard earlier highlighted, one size fits all doesn't work in this industry as well. So you need to engage, on Terje's point earlier as well, you need to engage with customers, understand their needs, and define these solutions, and that will take you to the next level. And now you start thinking about the future in 2 5 years time, whatever we talk about the autonomous vehicles. So unless you become mature in this technology, in the 5G applications, and provide different low latency kind of solutions, we won't be able to get into the future which we always talk about, basically.
Sharad, that's excellent. Final point there, and advice for us to end this live Q&A with. So thanks very much for the comments there, because we are out of time. So thank you to all of our guests who joined us for this live program today, and of course to our audience for sending in those questions. Absolutely terrific. We still have a few questions left, and we promise we will add them to the pile of questions we've got for tomorrow.
Yeah, but do remember to send in more questions for the live Q&A show as soon as you can. Don't leave it too late. And don't forget to vote in the poll question. There's still time for you to have your say and swing those votes even further. So please vote now.
Yes, vote now. We'd like to see a change in that poll tomorrow. And that's a wrap for day one of this year's 5G Evolution Summit. And don't forget, if you missed any of the earlier programs, they are all going to be available to watch on demand from tomorrow. Speaking of which, Ray and I will be back with you tomorrow for day two, the final day of our summit. And we have more interviews, roundtables, and another live Q&A show. We start at 2:30 p.m. UK time, but please check the TelecomTV website for exact timings and more information about the agenda. For now though, thank you for watching and goodbye.